I've been playing video games for a long time, about as long as I can remember. They've been a great source of comfort and entertainment, but they've also enriched my life and connected me with a lot of awesome people. They've showcased art and music in such a unique way and told stories that have stuck with me for a very long time. If film is art, then video games are art at this stage, combining acting and sound design and visual design with the interactivity that makes it so different from every other artistic medium. Are there lots of market-tested, soulless, and trite games that are pushed out every year with the sole intention of making money? Of course. I mean, same goes for every art form. What constitutes something meaningful and something meaningless will vary from person to person, but I wanted to take this time to talk about the games that I love. My goal isn't to present this as some list of the greatest games ever made, because despite my almost 2 decades of experience, I have no authority on what's good and what isn't good. I can only talk about what has resonated with me the most personally. Some of these games I'll be talking about are widely considered to be masterpieces, but others, especially given hindsight, aren't really that great. But they've left enough of an impact on me to be able to be considered my favorites, in spite of their flaws. Can this list change as time goes on? Yeah, I mean, I'd probably imagine that it would. Who knows what the gaming landscape will look like 10, 20 years down the line. But I only see games being added onto the list, not any of these falling off of it. I kept my selection of games on this list pretty concise, and that's because I only want to address the games that I feel like have maintained their importance to me and will continue to do so into the future. With all that out of the way, here's my list, as of May 2023, of my favorite video games of all time. This video is being published on the release date of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, a game that, while I'm very excited for, is dragged down a bit by the knowledge that even if it surpasses its predecessor in quality, it'll never be quite as special to me as Breath of the Wild was. Breath of the Wild is the game that all other open world games wish they could be. I've played other games in this genre that have surpassed it in various ways. Elden Ring has better bosses and a more interesting setting, GTA 5 has better characters, Skyrim embraces modding culture to a ridiculous level, but Breath of the Wild as a standalone experience is the most liberating game I've ever played. Series director Eiji Aonuma said something during one of the previews for Tears of the Kingdom that I think is rather poignant.
I'm sure some of you watching me play were thinking, wait, if you could do that, then maybe you could do this too.
I'm glad he said this because I think it describes Breath of the Wild just as well. This game has an amazing ability to poke and prod at the imagination of the player with its gameplay. Wood can be set on fire and floats, metal attracts electricity and sinks in water, fire creates updrafts of wind that can be used to reach higher areas, the stasis and magnesis runes let you interact with your environment to such an extensive degree, and all of these systems come together at your disposal in a world that is so full of interesting places to find and puzzles to solve that even after 200 hours and multiple save files, I am still finding shit that I have never seen before. The actual story to this game is pretty subpar, but it more than makes up for it by allowing players to create their own stories. Nobody's going to take the exact same path throughout Hyrule, and every little decision, like whether or not to take a detour or just continue straight to your current objective, all those little choices and their consequences will compound until your playthrough looks completely different from someone else's. I think everyone who has at least a passing interest in video games should play Breath of the Wild, at least enough to get through the first area. It really is that good. 2017 was such a great year to play video games. We got Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Horizon Zero Dawn, Persona 5, Tekken 7, Resident Evil 7, which brought the series into a new era, Cuphead, Hollow Knight, Slime Rancher, the game that convinced me to never enter a casino, and even games like PUBG, while not amazing in hindsight, still dramatically changed the industry's landscape. You can learn all of this simply by reading the Game Awards 2017 Wikipedia page, but if you skim that article, you might simply glance over the list of awards and skip past a little game that won Best Soundtrack called NieR Automata. But that's why your teachers in school always tell you to read closely, because skipping this game would be fucking stupid. NieR Automata is a game that bounces back and forth between somber exploration and intense climactic set pieces. The desolate cityscape that the world of NieR Automata is built around is one of my favorite areas in any game. The distant pianos accentuate this lost human civilization that has since been reclaimed by nature. These downbeat moments of wandering and occasional combat are positioned in stark contrast to the ridiculous scenarios and boss fights that take place when the story gets moving. I believe NieR Automata has the best boss fights of any game that I've ever played. A game like Elden Ring might outdo it when it comes to mechanical intricacy and complexity of attack patterns. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Elden Ring has amazing boss fights too, but NieR Automata just makes every fight into such an insane spectacle. The way the music surges in conjunction with the industrial and often massive boss designs, every single fight was so exciting. And I really cannot emphasize my praise of the soundtrack enough. Keiichi Okabe is not a composer, he is a god, and every single piece of music to come out of this game is so fitting, overlaying these loud orchestral symphonies with angelic and occasionally bizarre vocals written and performed in a language that doesn't even exist. Yeah, there's some weird, often contrived anime bullshit in here, but that doesn't take away just how exciting this game is and how masterfully it was executed. Here's another game that came out in 2017. At least that's when it finally made its way over to America. Those of you who have seen my gaming in 2021 video might not be too surprised by this opinion, but Yakuza 0 has stuck with me super strongly ever since I first took a risk on it. Yakuza 0 is great, not only because of the way it sets up for future games, which I have played at this point, by the way, but because of its own standalone story. The dual narrative at play in Yakuza 0 is so gripping and so easy to get invested into. While the two protagonists never actually interact until after the credits roll, characters constantly cross over between Kiryu and Majima's stories, and each time you get to see them in a new light. The villains are these grizzled, veteran criminal assholes, and while you also play as essentially up-and-coming Japanese gangsters, you see both of them struggle with what entering the 1980s criminal underground really means. The story takes itself pretty seriously and is very effective, but the combat and minigames do not take themselves seriously at all. The combat is so bombastic and almost cartoonish. You'll fight 100 men in a row just to make it to one final guy, and then fight him too. The minigames are a breath of fresh air from all the heavy story and have a decent bit of depth to them too. 100%ing this game apparently takes over 140 hours, which sounds daunting, but if you're not no-lifing the game and just playing for fun, having a town that's so full of content and things to find is only a good thing. Also, the soundtrack is great, up there with NieR Automata, but a very different vibe. If you're looking for a game with a complex story that you can get sucked into for 60 hours, you've got one right here. This one will probably come across as a bit of a weird choice to some people, especially anyone familiar with Halo as a series. Most people would probably pick Halo 2 or 3 as their favorite, or maybe Halo CE for the real old heads, but for me, Halo Reach is the perfect balance between what makes Halo special while also introducing new gameplay opportunities. Reach's story is tragic. It's a prequel, and none of the characters appear in any of the subsequent games, so that leads you to only one conclusion. They're all gonna die. Even going into the campaign knowing that, just watching your teammates slowly get picked off as the fight for the planet of Reach becomes more and more of a futile effort is still quite the emotional gut punch, especially for an Xbox 360 era first-person shooter. Halo Reach's gameplay and multiplayer are the real gem here though. I know fans will often pinpoint Reach and its inclusion of sprinting as the end of an era for Halo, but I don't really see it that way. Sprint is just one armor ability of many, and choosing to keep it restricts you from accessing things like the jetpack or active camouflage. I view Sprint and Reach as more of a power-up or an additional weapon, since you do have to pick it up and it occupies a slot that can be used by other stuff, as opposed to Halo 4 and beyond, where it's just intrinsically given to everyone no matter what as a basic control function. Other than that minor point of controversy, I think Reach's gameplay is great. The DMR is a fun new addition, the weapons are just as varied as they've ever been, and the inclusion and expansion of Halo 3's Forge and the custom games browser is still something that I believe should be industry standard for multiplayer games with strong communities. Reach is also important because it got me to buy an Xbox 360. Beforehand, I was ride or die with Nintendo, but Halo was just cool enough where I couldn't stay away. Buying a Microsoft console opened me up to so many new games I never would have tried otherwise, and of course, it made me into a lifelong Halo fan. Mainstream normie! Is probably what you're thinking, but I cannot downplay the amount of hours I have spent mining and crafting. I have bought Minecraft on Xbox 360, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PC, iOS, Android,
fucking Kindle Fire.
Every single year there are at least 2 weeks where all I play is Minecraft. It's a game that can be played and enjoyed in so many ways, whether it's just me putzing around in peaceful mode and mining late at night, or getting together with a bunch of friends and trying to beat the game in hardcore mode, which, by the way, was the most fun I've ever had filming and editing a video for my channel. Minecraft is so ubiquitous for everyone that has even the slightest interest in video games that it has become equally a game and a social experience. I mean, ask anyone if they want to start up a Minecraft server with you. Odds are they'll say yes. And if there's anything you don't like about the game or wish was in it, there's at least 50 mods that'll make the game exactly how you want it to be. Despite being the best-selling video game of all time at over 200 million copies sold, I don't find Minecraft to be overrated in the slightest. I've played it on so many consoles with so many people for so many years of my life, and I don't see that trend ever stopping soon. When I said others, especially given hindsight, aren't really that great, this is what I meant. Growing up has done nothing to help my opinion of the Pokémon games, especially the more recent ones. I genuinely felt guilty buying Pokémon Violet because despite growing up with the series, even I could sense how the games have refused to evolve at an appropriate pace for the highest grossing media franchise on the entire fucking planet. I get a good couple dozen hours out of the newer games and I enjoy them fine enough, but the spark feels like it's gone. Whether that's a result of corporate meddling, a lack of awareness of where the series could go, or just my perception changing as I've gotten older, I have no idea. It's probably some mix of all three. But there is no denying that the core concept of Pokémon was so important to me growing up. Last year, I graduated from university with a degree in wildlife conservation, and as odd as it may sound, Pokémon played a large part in that decision. Playing the games and watching the show growing up, as well as having pets around my home, fostered such a deep love for nature and animals. Instead of going to sports camp when I was in elementary school, I would take classes at the local nature preserve. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that Pokémon has changed the direction of my life and has inspired me to get out there and try and make a positive difference in the world. I was never really interested in the RPG mechanics of the games. I fell in love with the messages of camaraderie and appreciation for all the unique creatures that inhabit our world. If I had to choose a favorite game in the series, it would be Black and White, just because I love the animated 2D sprites and the music and the collection of new Pokémon introduced, but this spot really belongs to the series as a whole. Super Smash Bros. Melee was the game that formulated my interest in video games as a whole. Before Melee, gaming was a passing interest for me. I had played Mario Kart and Pokémon like most kids my age, but I wouldn't have considered gaming as a hobby. I remember visiting some family one stayed over, and for Christmas I received Super Smash Bros. Melee for the GameCube that my dad owned. He mostly played sports games on it, but Melee was one of the first games that was mine. I remember booting up the game and looking at the character select screen and being guffawed. Who the hell are any of these people? I recognized Pikachu and Mario, I guess, but Link? Kirby? Ness? Absolute mystery. So I chose Link because green's my favorite color, I guess, and I fell in love. So many characters to try and unlock. I remember leaving my GameCube on overnight to unlock Mewtwo and hoping my mom wouldn't notice. I loved the trophy gallery so much, learning more about all these characters and admiring the cool 3D models. And wait, you're telling me that all these guys have their own games? And some of those games are considered the best of all time? If gaming is an addiction, then Melee was my gateway drug, and I've been riding that high ever since. Melee got me to play Kirby Superstar and Ocarina of Time and Fire Emblem. It opened up the world of gaming beyond anything I could have imagined. Almost a decade and a half later, once I hit high school, Melee would once again become a big part of my life as I dove into the competitive scene. Every week I would attend tournaments and meet up with friends to play friendlies and show off how good my wave dashing has gotten. I was never all that good at competitive Melee, especially now that I've been out of the scene for like 5 years, but I will always cherish those days. And of course it goes without saying that the game itself is amazing, but even if it wasn't objectively great, I wouldn't care. Time and again, Melee has redefined what gaming could be for me, and I have it to thank for opening me up to all new experiences, both virtual and real. This video is probably shorter than one would expect for a topic of such grand importance, but I wanted to be as clear and concise as possible while still conveying my passion about all of these games to all of you. So I hope you felt that. Looking back on my list, it's really difficult to come to any particular conclusions about what games do and don't resonate with me. It feels like each of these games just came along at the right point in my life where I was ready to be wowed by them, and it's hard to figure out when the next time that's going to happen is. Yakuza 0 and NieR Automata were both games that I wasn't even sure if I was going to like when I first bought them, just because they were so different from everything that I had played beforehand. I guess all I can recommend is just keeping an open mind, and every now and again, maybe taking a chance on a game that you're not sure if you'd like it or not. Maybe step outside of your genre comfort zone. I'll include a small list of honorable mentions at the end, but as for right now, I've been unsubbin, and thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear about some of your favorite games down in the comments, whether or not they're shared with my own. Take care, and hopefully I'll see you soon with some more videos. All right.